Friendship for you coming out to our little town to speak to students and share your life story. For those that are not aware, Max is also a writer. He had recently published the book, and the title is Chance Alone, a remarkable story, a remarkable true story of courage and survivor at Auschwitz. And I understand that the book could be purchased at Chapters. And I would encourage everyone here, if you haven't read his book, to please go out and purchase one and read it. The stories that he has put in there and the life experience that he has, it will be life-moving. But without further ado, I'm going to give you all the time that I can, Max, to please come up and take the microphone from me.
While Melissa is getting the equipment ready, I just want to say that how wonderful it is to see all of you here. We call you my fellow pilgrims. We've all been to these horrible places that should have never been built. And you have come from near and far to this important Remembrance Day weekend. I just want to say there are so many teachers that I've come in contact with in my 26 years of speaking. And I know some of you longer than others. Ian Jones, principal of Milton District High School. I was called on a Sunday evening, I guess, by the Wiesenthal Center that I need to rush out to Milton Monday morning because somebody in Hamilton who was supposed to be there couldn't make it. So I came into the school and they brought me into the principal's office. I looked around and I thought I was in a cabin of a trapper, you know, with a pot-belly stove, and I said, what is this? So I said, I'm here. He thanked me profusely. He said, I really thank you for coming, because Thursday we are going to Auschwitz. I just about fell over. I says, you're going to Auschwitz? I mean, how many Jews are here in Milton District High School? He said, none. 40 students went. And another school board and members of that school board that I've been involved with for many, many years. Aurora District Catholic High School Board, Michael Nasello, Dominic Sculia, and all these people have the wisdom and the commitment to teach this subject in the school. Many schools that I've been to, it's not taught in every school. It truly depends on the higher-ups whether they're going to teach this subject in school. So, and I just want to say, last year I took, 2014 in fact, I went to Poland in the middle of the summer. Michael Nasello asked me to please come and join his students, and I spent 2 days in Auschwitz I and Birkenau, and I met a bunch of amazing students. I guess they were about 35 in number. I really got to know them and they really got to know me. They kept a daily, they had their laptops, they kept a daily diary. And this last summer I took part, I think another 30 some odd students who were going to Poland and other places, and their teachers, Jennifer, right there. So, and here we are, we're still speaking. And when I started to speak in '91, I was sort of wondering why the people need to hear my story. And you know, as time went on, suddenly I'm living my story all over again. The things that I've experienced in Europe have come here. So our visits to these schools are even more important. Because really, truly, we are the last sentinels on the walls. There's few survivors that are still left. And I guess you need to know that in any country where the Jews are the first one to be scapegoated, we are a very small number of Jews in the world, less than 1/8 or 1%, less than 15 million Jews. It starts with the Jews, but the entire society goes upside down. So I prepared this PowerPoint, and this is what I present at schools. A little bit graphic, but it is always good when I come to a school and I see the students are somewhat prepared. They have an idea of what they're going to hear about. Because I think in schools it is a very small subject, I imagine. And many schools where they really don't know much about it. And I was at a very large school. There were about 600 students. And I asked them, how much time do I have? They told me 45 minutes. I said, I can't do this in 45 minutes. So I need an hour and a half. So how important it is, preparation. It's the good for this country that everybody knows about this. So it's said that without history, there is no memory, and without memory, there is no future. It started with words. This is how people are branded. And it ends in horrible places. It is a time when the lies become the truth. So be careful what you buy. So here we are back to Nazi Germany. It started with words. This is Hitler's mouthpiece, Dr. Goebbels, the Minister of Propaganda. What the Nazis had was a supremacist Nazi ideology. Anyone with physical features, racial features, religious beliefs was to be eliminated from the face of Europe. And it was on radio, in their hate paper, newspaper, every day. Rallies in the Nuremberg Sports Stadium, there were 1 million people were Sieg Heiling, and they bought it and they got on board. Placards about Jews. Jews are communists, they're money grabbers. The eternal Jew, I don't know whether you heard of this clique of Jews. They are called the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion. This came out from the old Russia, the Tsars. The Jews are plotting to take over the world. And in movies, the Jews is... So Nazi Germany came out with racial laws. And the first step was boycotting Jewish stores. They painted on the Jewish storefronts. Here they were standing and holding the placards. Buy only from Germans, do not buy from Jews. There were 500,000 Jews in Germany among 60 million Germans. Just a shade over 1%. So it started with boycotting Jews, divest the Jews of all their worldly possessions, artwork, bank accounts, insurance policies, businesses, and sanctions. Eventually they put them on trains and shipped them out. So, and this is something BDS movement, I'm not sure whether you heard about this. It is something that everybody needs to know about. The Nazis had a massive apparatus of deception. So what BDS actually means, boycott means excommunication. You are separated from your worldly possessions. Divestment was expulsion and extermination. The Nazis quoted everything in very nice statements. We are going to resettle the Jews in the East. And this was the end result. In 1941, when the Soviet Union was attacked by the Nazis, the Wehrmacht was followed by special killing units called Einsatzgruppen. They were shooting Jews in ravines and pits. Over 2 million Jews were murdered. The Reichsführer of the SS, Himmler, told these troops that you are going to be the biggest heroes of Nazi Germany. But nowhere in the annals of German history will anything be written about your heroism, because this needs to be kept secret. The order was 1 Jew per bullet, 1 bullet per Jew, because bullets are very expensive. They realized that this is too slow, and they started to look for a pesticide. Eventually they came up with Zyklon B gas. There's a Roman Catholic priest, the Father Patrick Dubois, who was here in Toronto a few years ago. He researched this subject. He went to Ukraine and Belarus, Ossetia and Transnistria, to find the mass graves. And he was asked, why did you do this? He spent 7 years looking for Jewish mass graves. He came to many towns, and the mayors told him that we won't allow you to look for any mass graves. All he wanted to do is designate these graves as a Jewish cemetery. And he said the following, he quoted from Genesis chapter 4, verse 11. Cain and Abel are out in the field. Cain rose up and slew his brother Abel. God said to Cain, where is your brother Abel? Cain says, am I my brother's keeper? You see, Father Patrick Dubois is his brothers and sisters' keeper. I've never seen this before, that a rabbi of the synagogue asked him if I can give you a blessing, and he said, I would be honored to receive your blessing. So, you know, there's no freedom without responsibility. So this is my story in a nutshell, and I just have to ask Tracy, when do I need to be done by?
You have a bit of time.
I have time?
Yeah.
So my home was Czechoslovakia, a democratic country, where Jews had 20 golden years. We thrived. My town of 5,000 people had 10% of the population were Jews, 90 Jewish families. I had a large paternal side of my family, but the larger part of my family were my maternal family, who lived about 200 kilometers from where I lived. They had a large farm, they were farmers. My immediate family, we lived in a large house, 3 families, my paternal grandparents, my uncle and aunt. They had no children. I had many uncles and aunts all around the area, many cousins. And in my town, there was a Roman Catholic church. The majority of the people were Roman Catholic. There was a Protestant church, and there was a synagogue. These 90 Jewish families had an amazing Jewish synagogue, a synagogue with a Hebrew school. And we have lived in that part of the world for a long time, for 1,900 years. We did business with our neighbors. We helped each other. Jews practically made this town work. In 1938, I recall, my father had a crystal radio, I was 9 years old. All his friends came to our house to listen to this radio speech, and we also spoke German. My grandfather, who was a non-commissioned officer in the First World War, he was in the Austro-Hungarian cavalry, and I could hear his speech. Obviously, it was made by Hitler from Berlin. You could hear this voice pouring out of the radio like poison. And I remember a one-liner. Wir werden die Juden ausradieren. We're going to eliminate the Jews from the face of Europe. So my father, who was approximately 39 years old or 40, I remember these old people, they were all green in the face, and I sort of knew in my guts that something was going to happen. I didn't know what. Czechoslovakia was the first victim of Nazi Germany. There was a conference, the so-called Munich conference, and you know, many leaders of countries should really learn this history. Hitler demanded part of Czechoslovakia, and Great Britain and France, who were the guarantors of Czechoslovakia, they were asked to come to this crucial meeting, and they virtually, literally handed over my country on a platter to a dictator. And for this they received a document that Hitler signed, that he will not start a war. A few months later, Nazi troops marched into Prague, the country ceased to exist. We were given to Hungary, so you can imagine, and we, Czechoslovakian Jews, we knew that we were in mortal danger. It was too late to run anywhere. And even if you could run somewhere, nobody would take you in. This was the problem with Jews who were trying to run away from Europe. So Hungarians march in, the entire infrastructure in town changed. Our Slovak teachers, police, and bureaucracy left. They were replaced by Hungarians. And I remember there was a welcoming gate built in the center of the town. Welcome Hungarian liberators, you know. Many people who were our neighbors who were really waiting for the Hungarians to come in. We Jews were not waiting for them really to come in, because we knew Hungary was a fascist country. My father had a distillery. He was making slivovitz and vodka, and he also had a drinking place. It was called the Cellar, and he put up a big sign over his entrance: welcome Hungarians, free drinks to everybody. I think they drank him dry in 3 days. Everything was empty. And our lives changed. Edicts were posted in my town. Jews cannot sell alcohol and tobacco. Able-bodied Jewish men from 18 to 45 had to report to labor battalions. Jews cannot employ non-Jewish people. We had to take the crystal radio and the bicycle to town hall. So we were systematically removed from everyday life. We could never go and see our families in Slovakia, which became an autonomous country of Slovakia under a Roman Catholic priest, the Dr. Tiso. Never saw them again. I used to spend my summer holidays at my grandmother's great farm. My strapping uncles and my beautiful cousins. We managed to send a postcard once in a while. My father and uncle were gone in the labor battalions, and the Hebrew teacher was gone. And then we Jewish kids, I was 12.5 years old, we were thrown out of school. Hungarian teachers made us sit in the back row of the classroom. Every day going to school was a big fight. We were less than 10% of the student body. So I had an aunt who was an invalid. She lived with my grandparents. She taught me how to read. I was maybe 6, perhaps less. I read every single book that Jules Verne wrote. So now I'm out of school, I can do a lot of reading, but you know, my mother wouldn't let me do that. And my grandfather, after my father and uncle were gone, my grandfather was the head of the family. He always was. He taught me so many work skills, life skills. My grandfather was truly a man of the land. He knew animals, horses, and so on. And when I look back, I think back as if my grandfather prepared a map for me to travel by later on. In 1942, we received a telegram from Slovakia, a neighbor of my maternal family, whose name was Friedman, and the telegram said that the Friedman family, lock, stock, and barrel, they were picked up and they disappeared from the face of the world. You know, 1942 was a time when Nazi Germany was at the apex of its glory. They've occupied every single country in Europe. And we were absolutely devastated. My mother was destroyed. What happened to her? And in 42, we still didn't know what was going on just on the other side of the Carpathian Mountains in occupied Poland. I keep saying, not knowing is a terrible thing. 4 months later, we received a postcard. It said general government. You see, Poland, after it was occupied, the name Poland disappeared. It was called general government. And the stamp said Lublin district. And on the other side, the message stated that we, the Friedman family, we are all here together. We are working on farms and we are awaiting your arrival. What a wonderful bit of news out of this darkness. Some 10 other families received similar postcards. Remember the deception that the Nazis used 2 years ahead. My maternal family, they were delivered to Majdanek. Dr. Tiso was the first head of a state to deport Jews, the Slovakian Jews, to the death camp of Majdanek. So I found out after I was liberated that my family, before they were put into the gas chambers, they were forced to write these postcards to their families in Hungary. See how they were planning 2 years ahead of the actions that they're going to take against Hungarian Jews. You know, a few years ago, we sent an email to the museum in Majdanek, and we went to Majdanek a few years ago, Compassion to Action, and I was given a computer readout. I found 3 of my uncles on that list. That was quite a shock. I knew that they were all murdered. See, all those who had a tattooed number, they kept perfect record. So, 1943, my Aunt Bella died. Her life simply gave up because, and it was truly a gift from God. She didn't have to put up with what was coming at us just a year down the road. 1943, so there was death and there was birth. My mother gave birth to a little girl. I had 2 younger brothers, Eugene and Alfred. And little Judith arrived. There was 14 years difference between her and myself. And it was not a good year for a Jewish child or a Jewish mother to give birth to a child. In 1944, the last year of the war, we were going to celebrate Passover. It was on April the 14th, on a Friday night, the first night of Passover. And we were a traditional Orthodox family. The entire house is turned upside down, cleaned, and special dishes for Passover only. My mother made all these wonderful foods. 1944, we Hungarian Jews, we were in our homes. We had a large estate, you might call. We had a large vegetable garden, a big orchard. We had chickens, geese, and ducks all over the place. And by some miracle, my father and uncle were home, and we sat around the table telling the story of the exodus of the ancient Israelites from slavery to freedom. And the youngest child asked the questions, why is this night different than any other night? And his answer that we eat bitter herbs because to remember how bitter it is to be a slave. This truly was the Last Supper for the Eisen family and many other thousands of families in Hungarian Jews. We retired about 12 o'clock. We were out in the yard. It was a beautiful balmy night. Our property was safe. We had a large Alsatian. His name was Farkas. means a wolf. We were never bothered because he was guarding our property day and night. And my grandfather was saying, if we manage to somehow survive for the next 5 to 6 months, we are going to be liberated by the Red Army. Little did we know that the Hungarians were already planning to put this action into operation the very next morning. You see, the Nazis and the fascists, they all had this. Actions were always done on a Jewish holiday, or before the day before the Jewish holiday. I guess they figured that families would be together, or sort of to rub salt into the wounds. Early morning, Farkas was barking his head off, and we knew that. We could tell from the way he was barking whether it was a friend or a foe. Our gate was kicked in, and our bedroom door was kicked in, and 2 Hungarian gendarmes appeared. These are not like police that you know here. Hungarian gendarmes are a very crude bunch. They had a black felt hat with red rooster feathers. And they were yelling and screaming that you have 2 minutes to pack a bundle, we are taking you away. If you have any money or jewelry, hand it over, because where you're going to have no need of this. My mother said, put on layers of clothing. My baby sister was, I guess, about 8 or 8.5 months young. My father said, put your boots on. We had custom-made boots, and he went into the quarters of my grandparents. My grandfather was 77, my grandmother was 75. And this pandemonium, a neighbor came running in. Her name was Ili Klinka, the Christian lady. She was a good friend of my mother and aunt. Her son and I, we were in the same class. The gendarmes were yelling at her, get out of here, this is not your business. And she stood her ground and she said to my mother, Ethel, where are you taking this baby? Why don't you leave the baby with me? I can hear this, I think about this to this very day. We didn't know. We thought we were taken somewhere. We didn't know where, I guess Eastern Hungary or somewhere. Who would have thought? We still didn't know in 44. My mother didn't leave the baby. We were hauled out from our home. 500 Jews were sealed up in the school in 2 rooms. Imagine older people whose home was 5 minutes from the school, others 10, 15, 25 minutes away, and we are spending the second night of Passover on the floor in the schoolroom. It was a terrible night. Next morning, 500 Jews were assembled in the schoolyard, and they really made a show of this. 500 Jews were taken on an exodus out of town. The rabbi, who was an elderly gentleman, Rabbi Tenenbaum, with a white beard, was made to walk in the front of the column. The mothers were not allowed to have their carriages, so my mother was holding the baby in one arm, a bundle in the other arm, and some utensils on her back. I don't know what she was thinking. How is she going to take care of her family? I put on a train and delivered in a big city called Kasha in Hungarian, Košice in Slovak. 30,000 Jews were assembled in a brickyard, collected. In this brickyard, there were only 2 taps of water coming in to take care of 30,000 people. We were there for 3 weeks. Life was absolutely terrible. There was very little food given us. Babies were getting weaker by the day. My mother was breastfeeding this child. Every day, an SS officer arrived, and he told us the following story, brainwashed us. We are going to be resettled in the East. Families will be together. You'll be working on farms. You remember those postcards 2 years before. Repeated the same story for 7 days. I kept thinking that I'll meet up with my beautiful cousin somewhere near Lublin. We were pushed into cattle cars. Suddenly, military police arrived. The doors of these cattle cars were locked and bolted down. They gave us a pail of water and a pail for a toilet. And the train took off. 100 people who were standing cheek to cheek. You couldn't sit down, you couldn't move around, you were stuck in a vertical position like sardines in a can. I didn't see my two little brothers. They were stuck between taller people. You could smell the fear, and the toilet pail was full. All this stuff was sloshing on the floor of the cattle car. Imagine people brought their bundles, old people, some were claustrophobic. 2 old people died. We couldn't remove the bodies. Water was never replaced. You were standing for 4 days and nights without being able to go to the toilet. Whenever the train came to a stop, the locomotive needs water and coal. We were screaming for water. No water. On the 4th night, the transport came to a stop. I could tell that this is we have arrived into this black cattle car. You know, you can imagine when you shine a light into a cave and all these larvae are starting to move, you know, you're totally disconnected from the real world. You're trying to find your bundle and all this deception is coming at you. Don't worry about your bundles, you'll have it delivered tomorrow. You're out, you're on a platform, and you see strange soldiers, SS soldiers. That's the first time I saw them. They had the skull and bones, crossbones on their helmets. This was a unit. It was called the SS Totenkopf Division, the SS Deadhead Unit. These were the units that came to Europe, to every country. And the Jews were hauled by these SS guards to the death camps. And there was a separation immediately. People who looked like they can do slave labor were shown to the right. Others, like my mother, who had the baby in her arm, they called these people lives not worth living. My father and uncle and I, we were selected for slave labor. I was 15 years old. And they told us that we're going to see our families tomorrow morning. They're being taken for disinfection. See the deception. We were in the clutches of an SS unit. We were taken to a barrack. Our clothes were taken away. We were allowed to keep our boots. Our hair was shaved. We were put to a shower into a barrack. And I was able to lie down in this triple-tier bunk. It was a strange piece of, I've never seen a triple-tier bunk in my life before. It had no mattress or a blanket. But you know, it was absolutely wonderful to be able to lie down on wooden planks after standing for 3 days and nights in one spot. Early morning, we were woken up. Our bunks were being hit with the truncheons. Raus, schnell, out fast. We came out in front of this barrack and we saw the layout of this death camp. This is a picture of this lady, Ili saved when I came back. And this is another picture that she saved. This was taken in 1940. My father was a businessman, my mother, she was my guardian angel. I was a very difficult child, I have to, and she always managed to save my life. This is a cattle car that stands in Auschwitz-Birkenau today. And this is the guardhouse where the transports come in to the death camp of Birkenau. Initially, there was only one track, but for Hungarian Jews, they put down 2 extra tracks, so there were 3 tracks. And this is the layout of Birkenau, Auschwitz, the death camp. It is acres and acres. These are all wooden barracks. Here's a transport. My family simply made a left turn from the platform to gas chamber and crematoria 2, 3, 4, and 5. And these are pits where Hungarian Jews were being burned because the crematoria couldn't keep up with the gas chambers. So we're approximately here looking at this entire infrastructure. There's a terrible smell in the air of burning flesh, and you can see flames coming out from 4 huge chimneys. And I thought that I was in a big industrial zone, some steel mills. So we are still naked. 2 men in their striped outfits, they brought a canister of so-called tea, and we were given a chisel and metal dish, and we got a ladle of water or tea. My father asked them, "Are we going to see our families today?" They were laughing. They said, "Where did you come from?" I said, "Well, we just came from Hungary in the middle of the night." So they said, "In 1944, you don't know what this place is all about." He says, "Your families have gone through the chimney." This was the lingo here. We were given tattooed numbers and striped outfits, and you put this uniform on, and you really don't know who you are. They ask for people who can do farm work. We put up our hands. 100 of us were selected and marched down the road to Auschwitz I, the labor camp. This is Auschwitz I. These are 2-story brick buildings. These were really the 4 seasons of the camps. There was no other camp, simply because these were military barracks. We had indoor plumbing, unlike in the other camps, which there wasn't. On top of the gate it says, "Arbeit macht frei," work will set you free. And my life began here as a slave laborer working for the Nazi Reich. Had my father and uncle not been with me, I don't think I would have survived the first week. How do you get acclimatized living in a place such as this, where you are worked 10 to 12 hours of hard labor? Man getting 5,000 calories a day could not have done the work that we were doing on 300 calories. If you didn't do it, too bad. So our diet was a cup of water for breakfast, a ladle of soup, and dinner was a cup of ersatz coffee and a thin slice of bread and a tiny square of margarine. And your body is fast disappearing right in front of your eyes. My father taught me that no matter what happens, you need to put one foot in front of the other. You had to learn so fast here how to stay alive. There were inmates here, I've been there for a while. People would kill here for a crumb of bread. Hunger was so prevalent. I've seen the worst and the best. In July, my father and uncle were selected out. This is middle of 44. The Nazis knew that they were losing the war. There were tens of thousands of slave laborers working in huge factories all around the camps. Some 10,000 women worked in a big ammunition factory called Union Ammunition Works from Birkenau. So they were shipping their equipment back to Germany. They were very businesslike. We don't have the labor, we can't feed them 300 calories, so select them out at night, send them up the road and put them in a gas chamber, and that's it. And my father and uncle were selected out. I only had seconds to say goodbye to them, to the wives of the quarantine barrack in Auschwitz I. And I knew I was the rest of the family. My father gave me a blessing through the wires while the guard was yelling, "If you don't move, I'm going to let loose with a machine gun." Then he told me that if I managed to survive, I have to tell the world what happened. So unless it was said, if a door didn't open for you, you could not crawl out of this place. I had a terrible beating. A couple of weeks later, I lost a lot of blood. I went into shock. I was thrown into a ditch. I was out about 6-7 kilometers away from the camp. And my life was going through my mind. I knew that at night I'm going to be taken to a gas chamber. I didn't know how can I get out of this dilemma. I was hauled back to camp on a 2-wheeler that carried all the shovels and hoes and all that. And they dragged me to the barrack 21. There was a surgery and a ward in Auschwitz I, simply because they brought the International Red Cross and they showed them, look, we're taking good care of our people. They went to great lengths with their deception, the Nazis. I was operated on by 2 Polish doctors who were political prisoners. The chief surgeon was a Dr. Tadeusz Orzeszko, and his assistant was a Dr. Zbigniew Sobieszczanski. I was put up in the ward upstairs. If you couldn't walk away 2 days later, I was loaded on a stretcher, taken out to the truck. Dr. Orzeszko took me up the stretcher, brought me into the prep room of the surgery, gave me a lab coat, and he said, you'll be the cleaner. He saved my life. I worked for 6 months in the surgery in Auschwitz I. And you know, your life totally changed because you were now in a different layer. People were in layers. They're prominent people, were the political prisoners. The Jews were on the bottom of the list. But working in the operating room, I had other perks. I was working from 7 o'clock till 12 o'clock at night, but I did it happily. I tell the different operations in my book. I can tell you one thing that I guess after the 3rd month I thought I could do a hernia operation myself. Can you imagine? You're 16 and you're running the total show, preparing people every night before the next day operation, and disinfections, instruments that be taken care of, the linen, gowns, and all that. So, January 12, 1945, 73 years ago, there was a death march from Auschwitz. Some 20,000 of us were driven by SS and their attack dogs, and I was looking and thinking, where can I hide? But everybody said, you know, they're going to blow up every barrack before they leave, just like they blew up all the 4 gas chambers in crematoria in November. It was interesting that people were brought in from satellite camps, from Buna, Monowitz, which was Auschwitz III, and 2 of my friends from my town. And they were dumped into my barrack, in Barrack 21, and I recognized them. They worked in the coal mines. They were black from coal dust. Their name was Gubby, Weiss, and Andy. I begged them, you need to come. He said, no, we can't move anymore. They just lay down on the floor. So they stayed, and they were liberated on the 27th, you know. And here I was on a death march that lasted for 13 days, from Auschwitz to Mauthausen. So, can I keep talking? 5 minutes? Okay. I was at a trial of these 2 SS guards in Germany. My friend Bill Gleed was there. They're 95 years old. They were very proud that they wore the uniform of the SS. This is the other one. So, this I have to show you because there are people today who say that the Holocaust never happened. They are revisionists, deniers. You know, for me, that I've been here in this country 68 years. And for me to see swastikas, and on Highway 404 on the bridge, a big painting, somebody spray painted, Hitler was right. I cannot believe this. Here in Canada. So the killers were their own archivists and bookkeepers. Whoever had a tattoo number, they kept perfect records. You know, IBM built the punch cards for them so they could keep track of their 30,000 work camps and the prisoners. This was a document. The tattooed numbers changed to A. These are Hungarian Jews. My father, Eisen, Zoltan, 9891. My number is 9892. My uncle is 9893. And this is what happened July 9th, 1944. They were selected for medical experiments. Pharmaceutical companies asked for another transport. These people were loaded full of bacteria so they can build drugs. In Auschwitz, Dr. Mengele and his doctors who swore the Hippocratic Oath, they did experiments on tens of thousands of twins, men, women, and children. Women's hair was baled by the ton and shipped to the fatherland. Clothing. What Oscar Gröning did, he was also called the bookkeeper of Auschwitz. He collected the gold from the crowns of the people who were gassed. The gold crowns were extracted, melted down into bricks, and currency that was found in the clothing that people would hide. They were determined to find everything that the people brought with them. And he carried this loot 2 or 3 times a week in a metal suitcase to the Reichsbank in Berlin. And he claimed he was charged being an accessory the death of 300,000 Jews. He said, I was there, I saw it, I heard it, I smelled it, but I wasn't part of the killing machine. Well, the verdict was that anyone who wore the criminal outfit of the SS was a part of the murder machine. This is what women look like. Women had it 1,000,000 times worse than men. Women were truly the heroes in this place. Women joined Lager Sisters. They formed support groups. This did not happen in the men's camp. This was the work of the Sonderkommandos. Did anybody hear of a exhibition at the ROM today? It's called the Evidence Room. Well, this was the work that was done by the Sonderkommando. These were people who were brought on transports. They did this work for 60 days, and then they were gassed, and another new batch came. This is the family of Dr. Ojeshko. I met the family in 2010 when I was with a group, the Wiesenthal group there. I presented the family with a plaque. This is Dr. Ojeshko's son, Jan. He is a retired diplomat, and his daughter, Danuta. This was her husband, he passed away. And these are Dr. Ojeshko's grandchildren, Tomasz, Anna, Eva, and Julia. I'm constantly in touch with them. And this is where I work in the operating room. And so this is the death march started in Auschwitz. We walked several days, and then we're put into open boxcars, open to the elements. Imagine the train puts on steam, and you are there, and the wind is blowing practically your head off. We arrived in Mauthausen 13 days later. From there to 200 Camp Melk and Ebensveen. And this was liberation on May the 6th, 1945. Those that could still stand on their spindly legs because there are no muscles or flesh on any one of these bodies. I was suffering from typhus. I was flat out on my stomach. We were liberated by an American tank unit called the 761st Black Panther Tank Battalion. Johnny Stevens was the squadron commander. I met up with Johnny some years later. And this is my Danek. And I think this is what the chief was talking about. This is the memorial in my Danek. It's an urn with ashes. And this is my home, and this is Ili Klinka with her little daughter. This was a big L-shaped house. We had a fence, there was a big gate here, the orchard is in the back. I Googled the whole property because, there was an opening to claim your property back from the Slovak government before they entered Europe. And after going through many, many documents and things. The final answer was that they could not find the name Eisen in the registry. So the property is there. I've got a Google on it. That's the way it is. So I was in a you want to see those eyes? These are our great-grandchildren. This is the oldest, Yehudit. She has the name of my little sister, Judith. And this is Elisheva. 9, 7, and 5 now. Michael, they live in Jerusalem. I'm a very lucky guy. I've lived to see a 4th generation, and this is my book by Chancellor Owen, so I just want to tell you that I had not written this book, I would have missed out on a big, big thing. This has a very happy ending, this book. It's so important to write books. My book was launched in 2015, and a couple of weeks later I had a phone call from New York, and he said, my name is Josh Eisen, and you know, I read your book and we are cousins. I said, how? He says, well, look, I'll be in Toronto tomorrow. And he was here with a family tree. I didn't know that my grandfather had 7 siblings. Nobody ever told me that. They all moved to the United States. They emigrated to the United States in 1929. And Josh's grandfather, David Eisen, he went back to Hungary. And he started a wine business in the Tokaj region of Hungary, which is the wine region. And he came to visit us when we became Hungarians. His grandfather, David, came to visit his elder brother, Fabian, my grandfather, with his 2 daughters, Martha and Lily. So, Josh, our great-grandfather's name is Jacob. So Josh said the tribes of Jacob will meet in Manhattan. And last year, we gathered in Manhattan, 98 people showed up. It was over 60 members of my immediate family who were left in Europe. Out of 60, there were only 3 of us that survived. So my great-grandfather must have been a very wise man. He told his children, go and find a pot of gold in the New World, and they all thrived. And so Josh went to Slovak Republic last year, and he found this stone, and this is the stone of my great-grandfather. It stands there upright. There are very few stones left. Most of the cemeteries, the stones are broken or have been taken away and used in construction. This stone stands there, and his Hebrew name is Tzvi Yaakov Ben Zev. And here it says in Hebrew, he was a wise man, he helped the poor, he was, and all these accolades. So, this is my story. It is so important that everybody gets to be a survivor. And anyone that's heard a witness, we're all witnesses, you become a witness. And we hope that you will carry this and you will never allow anything like this to happen to anybody. Thank you.
Hear you speak tonight, and on so many other occasions that I've had the privilege to hear you speak. You've touched so many students and adults, and every time you speak, it's incredibly impactful. And when you gave your testimony at the Auschwitz trials last year and the year before, along with Hetty Baum and my father, Bill Gleed, you and the other witnesses cemented into the records of the German courts the truth about what happened in the Holocaust.
Exactly.
And that hard work and all of the work that you do is so appreciated by all of us. So thank you.
Thank you.